GTA is one of the world's largest and most famous franchises of video games, with total sales reaching more than 370 million copies to date. Since the release of the first version of this series on PC and PlayStation 1 console to date, millions of copies of GTA have been sold on various platforms, and GTA can also be mentioned as the most contentious game in history. All of this has occurred while Nintendo console footprints are not seen around here. This is strange because whether series creator Dave Jones or the Houser brothers are responsible for changing the GTA from 2D to 3D, they are all fans of Nintendo consoles. The spell of not releasing original versions was finally broken by the release of Grand Theft Auto: The Trilogy, the definitive edition, to release the popular 6th generation GTA trilogy for the Nintendo Switch console after nearly 2 decades. From the bad times of this trilogy at the time of supply was full of bugs and technical problems, and in the meantime, the award for the worst port reached the same version of Switch, so that this version of the game averaged an awful score of 46. Of course, Rockstar has since released new patches for this title, but the version of the Switch is still not acceptable. It may be interesting to know that each time the GTA has gone to Nintendo, it has defeat, and the bad performance of the Trilogy version is not the only failure of this collection on Nintendo products. In the past, 4 versions of the GTA series were released for Nintendo portable consoles, and strangely, none of them were much welcomed. For this reason, we shared with you the strange history of offering different versions of GTA on Nintendo consoles. The first version of the GTA series was released in 1997, and it took only 2 years for the title to be released for one of Nintendo's products, the ported version of the game Grand Theft Auto, which became available for the Game Boy Color handheld console. This version was ported by British studio Tarantula for Game Boy Color. The studio, which was bought by Rockstar owner Take-Two shortly after the start of the Game Boy Color port, became one of Rockstar's subsidiaries in 2002. The studio that changed its name to Rockstar Lincoln has since been in charge of testing, port and localization of all Rockstar titles. We should also add that although Switch is the first home console to host the GTA series, at first it was not supposed to be launched for Nintendo home consoles to this for more than 2 decades. You should know that Rockstar North Studios, the creator and developer of the GTA series, which was then known as DMA Design, worked on the port of Nintendo 64 GTA 1, and even this title was supposed to see several graphical improvements, but ultimately the Nintendo 64 version port of the game was cancelled for unknown reasons. In the same year that GTA 1 was ported for Game Boy Color, Rockstar released the GTA 2 for PC and PlayStation 1 and Dreamcast consoles. This time, Tarantula Studio ported for Game Boy Color handheld console within a year of GTA 2. The strangest and most notable thing about this version was the presence of female character as the main hero of the story, which has never been repeated in other GTA versions, and GTA 2's Game Boy port is unique from this perspective. Of course, this port is unique from another perspective, and that is the average score. GTA 2 for Game Boy Color with an average score of 35 is considered the worst version in the history of the series, even worse than the GTA Trilogy Switch port. After the super release of GTA 3 for the PS2 and becoming one of the most important franchises in the gaming industry, Rockstar still decided to port this title for Nintendo's handheld console, but the poor supply of GTA 2 for Game Boy Color made Rockstar think that for the first time it would develop a completely separate and unique version for Nintendo's new handheld console, Game Boy Advance. The title GTA Advance, released 4 years after the release of the GTA 2 port for Game Boy Color, was released in 2004 for the Game Boy Advanced handheld console. The title was like GTA 1 and 2 open-world games with top-down camera angles, although it benefits from some of the features of the 3D versions of GTA released for the PlayStation 2. GTA Advanced was actually a prelude to GTA 3, with events going on a year before this game and at Liberty City. The protagonist of the game was a petty criminal named Mike, who starts with various Liberty City gangs. Meanwhile, the complementary character GTA 3, 8-Ball, was also present in the game, but almost 90% of the characters in this version were completely new. Interestingly, the game was made available to Game Boy Advance users exactly on the day of the release of GTA San Andreas for PS2. More interestingly, GTA Advanced was the first and last version of the GTA series, which was not made by Rockstar, and it was the American studio Digital Eclipse that was tasked with making the title. Although the performance of GTA Advanced was drastically better than the GTA 2 Game Boy port, the game was ultimately not much appreciated by critics and audiences, with an average score of 68. 5 years later, in 2009 Rockstar was released a completely unique title from the GTA series GTA Chinatown Wars for another popular Nintendo handheld console, the Nintendo DS. Unlike GTA Advanced, this version was developed and released entirely by Rockstar and with the company's standards. Rockstar Leeds Studios was tasked with making this version, and Rockstar North Studios oversaw its construction. The game was officially unveiled during Nintendo's E3 2008 event and was finally released to Nintendo DS users on March 17, 2009. GTA Chinatown Wars not only broke the tradition of two-dimensional series titles but also named one of the best versions of the GTA series. A game that, despite using the same top-down camera, was extremely exciting and attractive, and the manufacturer's team created a memorable effect by taking advantage of the capabilities of the DS console such as touch screen and microphone. In general, this version was like a modern and updated approach to classic versions of GTA games. In 2009, the series titles were generally 3D, which is why Chinatown Wars, with its features, was a fun title to review the memories and mood of the classic games of the series. Like many other versions of the series, the game was played in Liberty City and featured audiences as a character named Hang Lee, who was a member of Triad and entered Liberty City and entered the Battle of Chinatown criminals. Although GTA Chinatown Wars was highly quality and received an average score of 93 from critics, the DS audience was not much welcomed, resulting in the late 2009 game being released for PSP. The iOS version was also available to users within a year, and finally in 2014 we saw the release of this game for Android. Interestingly, GTA Chinatown Wars was the latest version of the series to released for portable consoles. During the same period, several GTA series titles were available for other home consoles, but none of the titles such as GTA 4 and GTA 5 or even PSP versions ported for PS2, such as GTA Vice City Stories for Nintendo home consoles such as GameCube or Wii, were not released. After this title, Rockstar stopped offering GTA games for Nintendo platforms. But it didn't completely abandon Nintendo's consoles to launch its other titles. In 2007 the company released ported versions of Manhunt 2 and Rockstar Tennis Table games, as well as Bullies in 2008 for Nintendo Wii. The ported version of L.A. Noire was Rockstar's last title, released for Nintendo Switch in 2017. So that doesn't mean Rockstar has forgotten Nintendo in general. Only versions of the GTA series did not make it to Nintendo consoles for some reason. Of course, the procedure was eventually changed with the release of the Trilogy Remaster version for the Switch console. GTA 3, Vice City and San Andreas are titles that Nintendo console fans are now able to experience. The remaster was released on November 11, 2021 for Nintendo Switch, PlayStation 4 and 5, Xbox One, Xbox X Series and S with PC, and the mobile version of the title will be available to fans on an unspecified date in 2022. Now we have to wait and see if GTA 4 and 5 can also be experienced on the Nintendo consoles. Considering the release of the Trilogy version, it seems this will not be the last GTA for the Switch console, although we hope that in the future Rockstar will focus a little more on the quality of its remastered titles.